Oh, hi, everybody. My name is Matt Stores, and this is Mattsplaining. Today on the show, we have somebody who is an expert in something I haven't thought about since I was a little kid, and I'm very excited to talk to them. Expert, can you please introduce yourself and tell us what you're an expert in?
Hi, my name is Emmett Montgomery. I am a Seattle-based comedian and storyteller, but I am also maybe the best adult, like grown-up, not sexy, maker of paper bag puppets.
Interesting. My understanding of paper bag puppets is that they actually are a very historical and historical artistic endeavor that has its roots back to the just after the French Revolution.
I hadn't heard that.
So Napoleon famously would have his hand tucked into his jacket in a lot of his paintings and a lot of the depictions of him. And that was a sign of respect in the French culture, especially in aristocracy. But sometimes, he didn't have a jacket. And so what he would do is he had effectively a paper bag that slowly became a puppet because he wanted to personalize it. And anytime he didn't have access to his jacket, he would put his hand in there. And that's how he would show reverence and respect to his generals. And that actually kind of developed over time. He kind of bonded with the puppet, where when he was put onto Elba after he was deposed, he actually started to form a friendship and bond with the puppet because it was one of his greatest individuals he could associate with.
Like a Wilson.
Very similar to a Wilson. A lot of Castaway was somewhat based on Napoleon's experience with this puppet. And when Napoleon finally got back into power, he actually started consulting the puppet as one of his generals. He wanted to put him in charge of a regiment. And the puppet actually gave him advice prior to the Battle of Waterloo, also saying that, Napoleon should have used a different strategy. But, Napoleon famously did not listen to his generals, did not listen to his hand puppet. And, Waterloo turned out the way it did. And so I believe modern paper bag puppet started in American school systems somewhat to commemorate Napoleon and his artistic endeavors, but also had a basis in the lack of funding of the public school system in America. So for instance, they would have a lot of field trips and they would do a lot of the paper bag sack lunches, but they overbought the paper bags. And they're like, okay, well, what can we do with these paper bags? We have too many of them. So they're like, well, we have all these craft supplies in this box. Let's start combining these things together. Somewhat similar to when I was in elementary school and my teachers started us doing watercolors instead of brushes because they didn't trust us. They would let us use Q-tips instead. So, it's that cost-effective, American school system dynamic that kind of precipitated the paper bag puppets. And I think that, from you mentioned not doing adult paper bag puppets, the sexy kind. There is a subset from my research, there is a subset of sexy paper bag puppets.
I don't doubt it. I'm sure it's there.
It's there. It was a little shocking and jarring, honestly, to see it. But they invest themselves. It's still a creative art form, and they put the work in. And you gotta, even if it's not something I'm the most comfortable with, it's like, oh, there's a lot of work, a lot of thought that went into those things. And I respect that aspect of it, even if it's not something that I would necessarily seek out on my own. It's just a fun thing. It's like I have extra craft supplies. What can I do with them? Let's have some fun with it. Let's add some character to this thing that normally would just be used once, and maybe keep it around and have a little bit of personality and play some games with it. Overall, that's mostly what I know about paper bag puppets. How much of that do you feel was accurate?
Matt, there exists factual truths and then emotional truths. And what we hope is real. And I think you covered a lot of that. As far as Napoleon's involvement, when it comes to a bloody tyrant, in the pain of war, I think the thought of him carrying a puppet with him would sort of soften that. And also a cautionary tale as if he would have only listened to that inner voice, what would have happened?
Absolutely. The world would be
I
very
don't know
different.
if it's true. I hope it's true. But my relationship to the paper bag puppet is different than Napoleon's.
Okay.
I would say my first love was puppetry. I can't remember not being excited as a kid who had some limitations, some learning disabilities, a speech impediment, some motor skill issues, and also just maybe not growing up in the most kindest of environment. This idea of channeling imagination into something both magical but like tactile and real was always appealing. In fact, I wanted to be a ventriloquist growing up.
Interesting.
But because of my speech impediment, you can't quite hear my stutter. It shows up sometimes, but I really had some difficulty. I was in intense speech therapy, and sometimes my hands don't work. That didn't stop me. They don't work the way they're supposed to. That didn't stop me from being the weird kid who drew. But to this day, if somebody watches me draw, there is, every once in a while, an a-hole will let me know that I am holding the pencil wrong. But it's working for me. So find your own joy. I remember being extremely frustrated on not being able in kindergarten. One of my first memories from school is not being able to get the scissors and crayons to work the way I wanted in these beautiful paper bag puppets, which were based on the alphabet. I kind of forgot them until I moved to Washington from Utah. And this is where you hit on some truth, where my mother sent me a giant inexplicable gift package full of things she thought I needed, including about 300 paper bags. There was also a colander, some other stuff. And I was moving in with an adult woman. We had a bunch of this stuff. And wondering what to do with these paper bags. One Christmas, we were very poor, and I made my girlfriend at the time a paper bag opera, remembering that. And as an adult who had tamed my hands, I was able to actually make something kind of special. I was very lonely in the town I lived in, Bellingham. But my only real friend was my girlfriend, which put a lot of strain. And we worked opposite hours, and I would find myself getting drunk and making these paper bag puppets in my underwear. When I moved to Seattle, I kept making these, and I would sell them at the art walk. And a lot of times it was my grocery money and stuff. And I would use watercolor pencil and quality cardstock. And at the end of the day, it was a thing you could put your hand in. And I actually had some art shows and made some great friends.
That's great.
Both human friends and the puppets I made. When I found stand-up comedy, the puppets took a back burner for a while, but I still would make them occasionally. When especially like commissioned for some gags, and sometimes I would incorporate puppets in my variety shows. And every other year I would be part of a group show. But
a group show for puppetry?
Well, or just like an art show,
I see.
And I'm still not a puppeteer. I'm a puppet enthusiast who makes these very basic puppets, which a paper bag puppet, of course, it's you got these sacks that are actually pretty hardy. They're meant to hold apples and tuna sandwiches that you traditionally have a top, a face, and upper mouth, and then you can do the lower mouth and the body, and you have something. There's actually a lot of ways, right? But it is a beautiful thing. I got introduced to the concept. There's an art movement called Bread and Puppets that exists in upstate New York, which is a puppets and civil rights political action thing, where people go and they spend a summer or season or so volunteering and making both bread and puppets, and they use disposable and cheap materials. They use paper mache and the sacks from the grain, and they create these beautiful things, and then go to protests and parades. And it's a concept of trash art. It's not the value of the materials; it's making the thing and having it, and that kind of is what I've done.
Yeah, so like the creative expression of it, as opposed to the necessarily like what the inherent value is.
And in selling them, some people would be like, this a child could have made it, but it's like, well, not like this, but still, we'll find, people would be like, well, why would I pay for this bag? And it's like, you're not paying for the bag, you're not paying for the paper, you're paying for the puppet and being able to interact it. It's really when a few things happened. One, technology found me. I'm now able to use my tablet to draw with the stylus. My wife for work got a color printer. And when the pandemic happened, I found myself alone again, isolated. Right. And in October of 2020, there's a thing called Drawlowing that happens where artists all over the world on Instagram take prompts and then make a thing. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I be a maniac and make a puppet a day? And I ended up making 40 puppets. And by this, meeting some great artists online, and also finding some puppeteers and being able to talk to, I always was kind of a puppet fanboy, but actually getting some peermanship from people who do things so wonderful, things that I love. And then they kind of came back. And so it's something I can do. The most meaningful thing is I will make puppets of people's dogs. Sometimes
that's great.
They pass away, sometimes like that, but to have something. But the last couple Puppetobers, I made 5 this year, 5 puppets this year. I made 8 or so last year, and sometimes I will make things. It has been I have been making less puppets, but when I do, it feels more powerful because I'm able to kind of wade through my creative blocks. As you may or may not know, it has been a rough couple of years. Both of my parents left the planet. My Chihuahua, who was one of my muses, is now vibrating on a different frequency. But having those puppets of her I made have been great. And then the first puppet I made after my father's passing was actually an interpretation of Laura Gelpin's poem Two-Headed Calf, which is about wonderful. Beautiful tragedy. And you're able to make things using a limited medium. It's pretty can be limitless. You think this thing, I have one action, I open and close, but that can be a door that reveals things. It can be a flapping wing. You can hold it upside down and have it be a drawbridge, or all sorts of things. And it's coming up, and I don't really think in color. And so when I'm coloring them, I have to have a journey, and so it is the manifestation of a thing that felt impossible. One of my first memories is not being able to do this thing, and now I can do this thing.
That's so beautiful. I absolutely love it.
And I can't verify, but I do believe that I am the best 44-year-old chubby ex-Mormon paper bag puppet maker on the West Coast.
Yeah, I feel very confident articulating that to you as well. I think we can definitely say that. If people wanted to find out more about you or more about paper bag puppets, where could they go to find that information?
Oh, I would say my Instagram, which is just Emmett Montgomery,
Okay.
is where you will find my puppets and also kind of what I'm doing performance-wise. I have been toying with the idea of reawakening my Patreon and putting a lot of my puppet process and other feelings up there. And yeah, the puppets are also available at reasonable rates. If there's one you really like, I can send you the digital file, and we
Excellent.
can figure that. People can make them at home. But I'm generally, putting nonsense out there. As I said before, I'm mainly a stand-up and storyteller, and dog mom. But
Absolutely.
what are puppets? If anything, it's just a different type of story, a different type of joke.
Absolutely. Emmett, thank you so much for talking with me today. I feel like I learned a lot, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. My name's Matt Storrs, and this has been Mattsplaining.
Goodbye.